So it doesn't seem possible that we're going into week 8 of college football. Time has absolutely flown by. And even though the Oklahoma Sooners are on a bye week and they don't have a game this weekend, that doesn't mean that we don't have things to talk about that relate to Oklahoma. Because with this being the bye week for the Oklahoma Sooners, it gives us a perfect chance to take a look at the Sooners and give a state of the program. Talk about recruiting, talk about where Oklahoma goes after the bye, and why this past win for Kansas was so key to the rest of the season for the Oklahoma Sooners. But before we can jump into all of that, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe that the Oklahoma Sooners are going to come out of the bye an inspired football team? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. And having said all that, let's jump right into this. And as I said in the intro, there are several things we need to talk about. One such thing, as you could see in the title of this video, is Brent Venables the right guy? Because if you scour through social media, you'll see people posing this question all the time. And I can't wait to really get into that. But I do want to hit a few other areas before we get into that one. And I would love to start with recruiting, because Oklahoma is in a fantastic space right now when it comes to recruiting. They're a top 5 team in the nation with plenty of time and plenty of opportunity. They currently sit as the number 4 class in the nation with 2 5-stars and 22 prospects in the class, which, like I said, backs up that not only do they have ample time before early national signing day and then ultimately national signing day, but they also have a lot of room left in this class, and they're in several key battles. Whenever we talk about Oklahoma recruiting, over the past couple days, there's been a theme in a specific recruit that has been taking social media by storm, and that's Colton Vasek, because of his visits to the Texas Longhorns. And a lot of people are asking, could Colton Vasek flip from Oklahoma? Well, the answer to that is maybe he could, sure. Recruiting is a fickle game, and we've seen things like this happen all the time. No matter how good you are at recruiting, that's not going to prevent prospects from flipping from you because of other opportunities, and that's just the nature of the game. Recruiting is something that's kind of unique to what it is within college football, and so these kids are going to get opportunities to see things they've never seen before, and because of that, these decisions are going to be very difficult. If you're Oklahoma, though, and Colton Vasek does flip, what does that mean for you? Well, luckily for the Oklahoma Sooners, as much as you would love to keep Colton Vasek in your class because he is a top 300 player, he's one of the top players at his position, one of the top players in the state of Texas, and a very talented prospect. You're actually really lucky because you have a 5-star edge in your class already outside of Colton Vasek and PJ Adebayor. So, in a perfect world, you'd love to be able to keep both Vasek and Adebayor, but in the event that Vasek flips, you still have Adebayor to lean back on, and then you can build depth outside of that. So, Oklahoma's recruiting class is in a really good position. And I gave that whole long spiel about Vasek to just kind of reinforce that Brent Venables and the Oklahoma staff are doing a really good job on the trail. And I'm interested to see how they close this year out. Remember, last year when he got the job with Oklahoma, that recruiting class was in a dire situation. It was hemorrhaging players, and he was able to salvage it, getting Oklahoma not only a top 10 class in recruiting, but a top 10 class in transfer portal acquisitions, which was very, very impressive. So I'm really interested to see how Brent Venables and company finish out the year recruiting, because they have done such a great job so far. But now let's talk about the Sooners and the play we've seen on the field. Let's talk about the current state of the Oklahoma Sooners. And it's been an up and down year for Oklahoma. They started the year out riding high and then hit a 3-game skid where things looked like they were going south, and going south really quickly. But that's exactly why I keep talking about this past weekend. That Kansas win was a big deal. I understand Jalen Daniels wasn't there, and I understand that's going to affect Kansas's game plan. But first and foremost, Bean is a capable quarterback. He's a veteran presence within college football, and he played Oklahoma very well last year. Also, he's a dual threat guy. I'm not saying he hosts all the dual threat ability of Jalen Daniels, but he also is a dual threat guy to allow the offensive scheme to be more analogous to if they would have had Jalen Daniels than if they had a quarterback that didn't have the same skill set of Jalen Daniels. All that to say, Kansas is used to Bean. Bean is an individual that Kansas has gone out, schemed for, and been successful with. So it's not like they had somebody that they had no offensive game plan for. And even then, Bean played TCU very well the week before. So yes, Jalen Daniels not being there was a big deal for Kansas. But at the end of the day, if you're the Oklahoma Sooners, all you could have asked from your team was to show up and play good football. And that's exactly what we saw. One of the things I think is really interesting with this Oklahoma team is you can see whether you listen to the prospects, whether you listen to the guys on the team, there's a level of buy in, regardless of results, that I find positive. And if you've played for an institution that has had the level of success that the Oklahoma Sooners had for that long, whenever you face a skid like they had this season, it poses interesting questions. Because if you're in the building, you're not used to that at all. How are you going to respond? And one thing we've seen from Oklahoma is the team is responding well. Whenever you listen to them, there doesn't seem to be any blaming going on, at least in the media. And when you listen to the prospects in the recruiting class, they're all in on Brent Venables, which reinforces an idea that I've talked about before that we're going to hit on at the end of this video. You've got to give Brent Venables time. You cannot be reactionary and say he needs to go, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Right now, as we currently sit here and talk, Oklahoma's offense actually ranks inside the top 24 total offenses in the nation. Because whenever Oklahoma took that bad loss to the Texas Longhorns, everybody was kind of asking, is Jeff Lebby the guy? And I understand asking it after that game because you just played your bitter rival and you were able to generate no offense. So that was an unacceptable performance, and I'm certainly not going to argue otherwise. However, at the end of the day, even though you have had your quarterback unavailable for about a game and a half this year, you're still a top 25 offense, which I do think means Jeff Lebby's doing something right. He's calling something that's allowing your offense to at least have opportunities to be successful. Now, defensively, Oklahoma ranks outside the top 100 defenses in the nation, and that's an area that surprised a lot of people, myself included. And if you're asking what can be done to fix the defense, I think we have to go back to the fact that there is so much new, from new defensive coordinator, new head coach, new personnel, new scheme, that's bound to affect a defense. And if you want an example of how that can affect a defense, look no further than Oklahoma State, a team in your own state. Oklahoma State was one of college football's top defenses last year. They lose Jim Knowles to Ohio State, and they lose a bevy of players to the NFL, to the transfer portal, what have you. And now that's a defense that, like Oklahoma, ranks outside the top 100 defenses in the nation. Now, when they hired their defensive coordinator, a lot of people thought it was a great hire because the scheme he'd be bringing in was so analogous to what Jim Knowles had left. But it takes time. Inevitably, whenever you have these sweeping changes, there's going to be a cause and effect. And now we're seeing the effect. So is Brent Venables the guy? Yes, it is way too early to even think about moving on from Brent Venables. The man is just now trying to get his footing. And what we have seen is a level of buy in from Oklahoma that is positive. What we have seen is recruits being bought in Oklahoma, which is positive. To me, that points to things going to go in the right direction, but you need to be patient. You need to let Brent Venables have his growing pains because adversity can be the best way to learn. And for the Oklahoma Sooners and Brent Venables to overcome that adversity this year, those are going to be profoundly positive messages that they can learn from in the future. So is Brent Venables the guy? Yes, and it is way too early to think otherwise. It's only year one and he's never been a head coach before. Of course, there are going to be growing pains, but you have got to allow him to grow through them. So the state of Oklahoma right now, there's been some snags, but I absolutely think there's reason for optimism for multiple different reasons. First and foremost, you talk about recruiting. A top 5 class in all of college football with a first-year head coach, and you had a 3-game skid, and you're able to maintain that top 5 ranking. I think Oklahoma's recruiting is doing really positive things. I'm really interested to see how they finish out. And even if Bassick flips, in a perfect world, Oklahoma would love to keep him a part of this class, but the presence of PJ Adebayor takes some pressure off that edge position when it comes to recruiting. You just need to build the depth. Then when we actually take a look at Oklahoma in and of themselves on the football field, offensively, this is a top 25 offense in the nation, which is impressive when you think about the fact that they were able to generate no offense against the Texas Longhorns, and then Dylan Gabriel was out for essentially half the TCU game. So without Dylan Gabriel for a game and a half, you're still a top 25 offense. I'm not saying Lebby has been perfect. I think he's gotten a bit of blame. Maybe he hasn't deserved, though. As far as the defense is concerned, yes, the defense is a lot worse than people expected, but at the same time, Brent Venables needs to be given his time. I thought it'd be a defense that'd be better than we're currently seeing, but we also have to remember Brent Venables' defense is incredibly reliant on scheme and the personnel to be able to run that scheme well. So he needs to be given some time to recruit, get his guys in, implement them into the defense, and then to have his scheme really permeate amongst the team. Then we can have a more thorough evaluation of Brent Venables' defense. But until then, finally, is Brent Venables the guy? I don't think this is a question. Brent Venables is the guy right now. You have got to let him grow through these growing pains, and then after that, we can have a conversation. But it is way too soon to even be thinking otherwise, especially when you see the team still has so much positivity to it. There's so much buy-in. The way they fought against Kansas, I found, was positive. It's going to be interesting to see how they come out the bye, because they have a difficult stretch coming out the bye. Iowa State, Baylor, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech. I know there are going to be people that eye roll to that. That's a difficult stretch, and I can't wait to see how Oklahoma faces it. But you all know the drill. I've got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.